a transformative art movement beginning around the early 20th century. All right, so arguably the first great modern artist is James Joyce, who in 1922 published Ulysses. James Joyce was Irish. He was an Irish expatriate, and he actually studied Dante in university. So he wrote Ulysses as a way to imitate and almost surpass Dante. And of course, Ulysses refers to Homer's Odyssey. Now, we're going to read a passage from Ulysses to understand the power of its writing. Okay? Immutable modality of the visible, at least that, if no more, thought through my eyes. Signatures of all things I'm here to read, see spawn and see rack the nearing tide, that rusty boot. Stark green, blue, silver, rust, colored signs, limits of the Danfan. But he adds, in bodies. Okay, what does this mean? I have no idea. All right, I have no idea. I can explain to you Dante, I can explain to you Homer and Shakespeare, but I struggle with James Joyce. And there are two reasons why. Okay, the first reason is he was a singer, so you have to read what he writes as though it's music. Okay, it's meant to be read out loud, so it's musical, and that's really the power of his writing. He's more focusing on the style rather than the substance. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing is that he was extremely well read, and everything that he writes, in every sentence, there are multiple allusions and references to other books. Okay, so you must have read what he read. You must have experienced what he experienced in order to understand him. And there are those who argue that Ulysses is the greatest book in the world. In fact, if you go online, you just Google the best book ever written in human history, James Joyce is up there, okay? Ulysses is either number 1 or number 2 on these list of 50 best books in human history. And there are many who tell me, yeah, James Joyce is hard, but if you just spend the time to go over what he's writing and connect the references, you will have a transformative intellectual experience. Okay, it's almost like doing a jigsaw puzzle. And that's all true, okay? But think about what they're saying. What they're really saying is that James Joyce believes that he is God. He has the mind of God. And if you spend the time to understand what he writes, and it might take you years, decades, okay? You will access the mind of God. That's very different from Dante, which is trying to use poetry to bring people into the mind of God, which is the truth of the world, okay? Dante is a lot more accessible than James Joyce. So let's look at the differences. Modern literature, as represented by Ulysses, it is elitist, it's self-referential, okay? It just has a lot of allusions and references, but you actually don't know what the meaning is. Like, what is the bigger story here? And it's uses something called stream of consciousness writing, which is it's trying to capture the mind as it thinks and works, okay? That's different from Homer, who was very democratic. He was trying to bring beauty and truth to the people through epic poetry, okay? So starting with modern literature, we have this abrupt change in the nature of literature. Before, it was about empowering people to seek the truth for themselves. Now, modern literature, it's really just this very elite club of very arrogant, haughty people, okay? James Joyce was good friends with Virginia Woolf. In fact, Virginia Woolf actually published James Joyce. In 1927, Woolf published a book called To the Lighthouse, and it's probably her most famous work. And in it, she's also trying to respond to Joyce. To the Lighthouse, it's very much based on Homer's Odyssey. And it's extremely well written, okay? Let's just look at what she writes. There were the eternal problems, suffering, death, the poor. There was always a woman dying of cancer even here. And yet she had said to all these children, you shall go through with it. To 8 people she had sent relentlessly that, and the bill for the greenhouse would be £50. Okay, so what she's doing is she's reading a book and she's thinking about the issues raised by the book, but she's also thinking about life. Like, oh, I have to go and do something, okay? And that's really how our minds work. So this captures really well stream of consciousness thinking. And she's heavily influenced by Freud, right? She's trying to go into the unconscious and trying to figure out how the unconscious works. The Lighthouse is really about memory, about perception, about remembering, all right? But again, it's extremely self-indulgent, and it's inward-looking. And it's and again, it's a radical departure from traditional literature. So let's compare modern literature with Dostoevsky. Remember, before we discussed Dostoevsky. For Dostoevsky, the heart is a deep, impenetrable ocean, and our psychology responds to external events. We live in the world and respond to the world. We must surrender ourselves to others to seek salvation and redemption. We cannot rely on ourselves to forgive ourselves, to love ourselves. We must rely on others. We are in a community of people, okay? So these are the truths of Dostoevsky. When we get to modern literature, self-discovery will allow for self-mastery. Our psychology responds to suppressed memories. We can be our own salvation and redemption. It's too optimistic. It's too positive. Okay? It's saying that, hey, if you're poor, don't worry about it. As long as you think happy thoughts, you'll be good. Okay? This idea of positive psychology, right, that we have today. Carl Jung and Friedrich Freud also had a major influence on Pablo Picasso. And you can see it from his painting, Head of a Woman, okay? Now, what you will notice is it's a cubist portrait of a woman, but if you look further, it's actually two people as well, okay? And so what this is doing is, it's visually representing the theory of the self as presented by Jung, okay? So do you see the similarities? Great. Okay, so why is this art spreading throughout the world? Well, I mean, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but let's look at an article, right? Was modern art really a CIA psyop? All right, so this article is from JSTOR, which is an academic journal, very mainstream, and let's read what it writes. In the mid-20th century, modern art and design represented the liberalism, individualism, dynamic activity, and creative risk possible in a free society. Okay? So in other words, right now, the capitalist West is at war with communism. 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, communism is spreading all around the world. It's very popular among people. It calls for collective action. So the capitalist West, the powers that be, they're spreading Freud. They're spreading Joyce. They're spreading Wolf. They're spreading Pablo Picasso. They're spreading all this art, this modernist art, in order to create a cult of the self. Because if you believe in the cult of the self, if you believe that you are the source of everything, then you're not capable of collective action. Okay? So in many ways, this is a response to the problem posed by communism. And this will be obviously most obvious during the Cold War. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. So why would that be bad? Why would the cult of self be bad? Well, this is Mikhail Buchanan, and he explains it very well in his writings, okay? So let's read really quickly what he wrote. Everything human in man, and freedom above all, is a product of a social collective labor. To be free in absolute isolation is an absurdity invented by theologians and metaphysicians who have replaced the society of humans by that of God, their phantom. To say that each person feels free in the presence of God, that is, the presence of absolute emptiness, nothingness. Freedom in isolation, then, is the freedom of nothingness, or indeed the nothingness of freedom, slavery. God, the figment of God, has been historically the moral source, or rather, the immoral source of all slaveries. So what he's saying is, the radical turning point in human history is the invention of Christianity, because it gives us the idea of individualism. And we think that's a good thing because we're taught that individualism means free choice. It means freedom. But what he's saying is, that's an absurdity. We only have freedom from our community. We only have freedom if others are free around us. If we are free, but no one else is free, then we are slaves as well. So because individuality prevents us from working with others, from loving others, then that makes us slaves to ourselves. And that allows for the powers that be in society to better control us. Okay? And so what he's saying is Christianity is a slave religion. All right? It was designed to make us all into slaves. And this will, and Buchanan lived in the 19th century, but if he read Freud, then he would also argue that the cult of psychoanalysis, it's really about entrapping yourself in your own emotions. As for us, we want neither phantoms nor nothingness, but living human reality. And we recognize that man can feel free, be free, and therefore can achieve freedom. In order to be free, I need to see myself surrounded by free men, and be recognized as such by them. I am free only when my individuality, reflected in the mirror of the equally free consciousness of every individual around me, comes back to me strengthened by everyone's recognition. Okay? So what he's saying is this: if you want to be happy, if you want to be free, care about others, be kind to others, work with other people, sacrifice your own self-interest for the self-interest, for the greater good. Okay? That is what will make you really happy. And that's generally true because, think about this, okay? If you're by yourself, will you be happy? Probably not. But if you have a family, you have kids, you don't have any freedom, but you're a happier person. In many ways, you're a more free person because you have better control of your emotions. You have more purpose in life. All right, so let's bring this to the present day, social media. What social media is, it is the democratization of the cult of the self. Before, only the wealthy could enjoy the cult of the self, right? Only the wealthy could take the time to self-indulge. But now, with social media, everyone can participate in the cult of the self. And that has led to a global epidemic of depression, okay? So look at year 2015. You see this huge spike in depressive symptoms. Because 2015 is the year when we had access to smartphones, right? So now young people feel they can't do anything right. Life is not useful, and I do not enjoy life. Okay, this huge spike, which has led to a huge spike in suicide, all right? And this is happening throughout the world, not only in North America and Europe, but also in Latin America and East Asia as well. So the cult of the self, which originated in Europe, has now conquered the world through technology. All right? So that's it. All right? So the answer to the three questions. The first question is, where did Freud get his idea? Second question, why did Freud break with Jung? The third question, why is Freud's idea so popular today? Okay? Well, it's all to serve the interests of the powerful. And that's the world we live in today. And the only solution moving forward is if we rediscover our humanity, if we are able to find the courage to care about others and put the interests of others before our own interests. We ourselves must choose to kill the